The purpose of this tutorial is to talk about importing and processing data coming from external data sources. So far, we have been writing programs in Java that reads data from the user entering this data on the keyboard. So this has been achieved using the scanner and creating a scanner object passing system.in as a parameter when we create the scanner. In Zybooks, the input is typed in this box, and when you click Run Program, Scanner will read tokens from this input one by one and pass it to your program to process. Of course, in Eclipse, when you run the program, it will be interactive. The program execution will stop, waiting for the user to input and press Enter. And then when this input is provided, that token will be read and passed to the program, and the program will proceed. So this is useful for implementing interactive programs where the user is interactively providing input to the program and the program is processing it and providing some output to the user. Now, many often we would like to process data that is coming from different data sources than the keyboard. So this is the case for many data processing applications where you have a large amount of data coming from data sources such as files, such as databases, web services, and so on. So the discussion of today and this homework Lab 5, is relevant for many of these data processing applications. In Homework 5, what is new is that the data is not coming from the keyboard. You will not need to enter any input here for the first part, only for the second part when you're interacting with the program. The data about restaurants is coming from a CSV file called Athens diner.csv, and CSV stands for comma separated value. So this file is already uploaded in Zybooks, so you can access to it. You can take a look at what's inside this file by clicking download and saving this file. So this file will be downloaded and automatically zipped. You need to extract that zip archive, and let's take a look at what's inside the CSV file. So a CSV file is basically a text file in which you have data separated by commas, hence the name comma separated values. So you can open this file in any text editors such as TextEdit or in your favorite text editor. Like I'm opened it in TextEdit in Mac, and you can see here that each line contains information about a restaurant. You've got the restaurant name, comma, phone number, comma, rating. Okay, and there are a list of 50 restaurants in this file. You can open this file in your spreadsheet application such as Excel, and it will be formatted as a table. The basic idea is that this file is a text file, so it's easily processed by many applications. So that CSV file the CSV format is still typically used when we have small amount of data being interchanged among applications. So it's a common format that you may see elsewhere. Okay, so that file is already uploaded into Zybooks, and let's take a look at the template for the main file. So the main file basically has two parts. Part 1 reads the file, and part 2 provides a way for the user to interact with the application in order to search for restaurants. So let's take a look at part 1, which is the main interesting point in here. Well, in part 1, this first part in the file in main.java, you see that we have two scanner objects. One of them is called file and the other one is called keyboard. Now this one is very familiar to you. This one has been used to read from input, and this one is actually used for the second part, so it's not needed for the first part. We can move it actually to down here. What's interesting and new in here is scanner file, and this is basically a scanner object called file, and it's created by calling the constructor on the scanner class. What's different basically in here is that instead of passing system.in as a parameter, we're passing a file object created from the name of the file, athensdiner.csv. So what this does, basically, it provides a scanner object that reads from the file rather than reading from the standard input from the keyboard. So those two extra classes, file and also IO exception, are imported. They need to be imported. And IO exception is also needed in here because the file may not be found. And typically when we're dealing with files or data coming from external data sources, there are many contingencies that we need to plan ahead for. The file may not be found, it may be corrupt, and many other situations as well. All right, so let's keep this part and focus on this one. So we created the scanner object to read from that file, athensdiner.csv. Now, the remaining part is basically very similar to how we've been using scanner in the past. So what we're doing in here in this loop, basically, we're trying to read all of the content of the file line by line. So next line is a method that we've used in the past to read one line from the keyboard and read it as a string variable in our program. So this is pretty much the same when we did scanner or keyboard next line, except that we're reading one complete line from that file. The new part is in here, has next line. Basically, this method will return true as long as there are more lines to be read from the file. So you can think about this loop as reading lines one by one sequentially from the file until all of the lines have been read, and each line is read in one iteration, is returned to that variable line, and then processed within this loop. So what we would like to do in this loop is basically to convert information, parse information from the file into our own data structure in the program. And the data structure here is an array of restaurant object called restaurants, which is created with 50 restaurants because we know ahead of time that we've got 50 data points, 50 restaurant in that file. So once again, this is very typical in data processing application. The data is coming in a format which is not usable for in our programs. We need to convert it. We need to parse it in order to process it. So this applies whether the data is coming from a database or a file or a web service or different data sources. The main point in here is that we would like to read this data and create restaurant objects based on the restaurant name, the restaurant phone number, and the restaurant rating, and storing these objects in the array. So once this part is done, the file has been read, the data from the file would have been reflected in this array. And this array is accessed in the second part in order to provide that search engine capabilities to the user. So before proceeding and providing more details on this part, I'm just going to end by commenting out this line. And in this line, basically, if I comment this line out, what it's going to do, it will basically read the line and print the line out. I'm also going to take out the second part because we don't need it. So I'm going to comment out this part to see what we get if we run just this first loop. So this first loop will basically read one line from the file, print it, and keep doing this until the file has been exhausted. So what we should see basically in the output is the file printed out. Okay, so I'm going just to run the program here, see what we get. Looks like we have an error to fix. It says the error in line number 55, and there is an identifier expected. So let's scroll down. Basically, I commented out too soon. I should have made that comment just below, just after system, after the second bracket, basically, or after file.close. So I'm just waiting. It looks like the web page is frozen. So I'm going to refresh. Alright, so let's load the default template again. And I'm going to comment out this part and also this part. Be careful where I put my last comment here. And now I can run the program and see the output. Alright, so as you can see here, it's printing the files, the content of the files. It matches the content here, right? Line by line to the output. And basically this is the result of going into this loop. While file has next line, we need to read the line and then print the line. Of course, printing the line is only for debugging and testing purposes, because in reality I don't want to dump the file into the output. We need to think about how we process this line and store this line into the array. So this will be the topic of the next section of this tutorial.